Hello, hello. Welcome to the stream. Let's press some buttons. I've changed some stream setup, so let me know if anything is weird. I hope it works fine. So today I am doing some, we will do some what I call virtual file system stuff. So, I'm making my 2D library thingy. I don't know if this even compiles right now. Maybe what I can show is, me and my friends have been, I have a few friends, we're working on a little game. Using my library. Hello, Ginger Bill. So maybe this works. So here's a quite fun thing I did the other day. I did like this in my own library using a method called, what's it called, dual grid tile set painting thingy. It's essentially, it's pretty cool. It's you can paint like this. You can even paint the corners like this. This is not related to what we're doing today. I was just starting the stream up a bit, doing some random stuff. And then it crashes because I painted outside the it doesn't have chunks yet. So I painted outside the grid there. So but it's pretty fun to try to do something using the library with some friends. For example, I have a little UI thingy here, and I can paint these. It's pretty fun to play around with. But it's just cool to see, your own library used for something, like you using your own library for something that feels a bit more like a real game. So that's fun. But that's not what we're doing today. Hello, channel. Many numbers. Why VS Code did you break up with Sublime Text? We'll see. Maybe I'll go back to Sublime Text. I'm sometimes a bit annoyed with VS Code. I like having the debugger built in, and I like sometimes I use like some of the built-in AI features for code review or just finding bugs. They do help. That's something Sublime doesn't have, but it's also slow and annoying. And I try Z. Z is immature, so we're sort of stuck in a weird in between land with editors right now. I feel like. Thank you. It's my friend who has made the graphics for that. You saw. Anyways, also I have update. I think I have changed the bitrate of this stream. It's higher now because I realized it was a bit low. So I hope it all. I updated OBS and I've I've changed many things. So I hope it all works fine. Said is there's so many like small bugs that you just like for me the worst bug I had in Z was that I love that it has a debugger built in, and I press the key to rerun the last session and it just starts one of the random debug tasks, not the last one, even though it works in some project to restart the last one, but in some projects it just starts a random one, and that has been for like a month. And I've tried to ping them about it, but it just doesn't help. Like this, no one seems to care about this. Everyone, it is, even though Z has they're not trying to be overly AI. They call it agentic engineering, and they're like trying to be like a bit more nuanced about it. And I appreciate that they're not like this crazy Silicon Valley AI thing. But despite that, if you go to the Discord and ask about anything that's not like related to using AI stuff in the editor, it seems like there's just crickets. I have not tried VS Codium, but I'm almost gonna go back to Sublime. We'll see what happens. We'll see. But yeah. How do I not implode from having to write Python at work? Hopefully hopefully the product at least is something. Hopefully some part of it is fun. Or maybe you can find like a small part of it that's fun. You know, like making the little thing you're working on right now nice instead of I don't know. Try to make it happy. Make it happy. Right. You see, I don't have two screens anymore because my table is too small. It's literally that's the problem. I moved and this room is smaller. And I don't have room for my other screen on my table, so that's why I do. It's a bit more. Do you dislike implicit context allocator parameter? Oh, that was I was having a go on Twitter yesterday or a Blue Sky or whatever, and writing about things. No, or maybe you just meant. Maybe you didn't see that. Maybe you saw this. Yeah, I tend to put this thing here and write them out. Especially so if you go to the main library file here, especially in here, I think it's very helpful to always have to specify the allocator, because in the library itself, inside Karl2D, I have two allocators. Right, yes. So you meant, yeah, so the person means that I did this. Yeah, I tend to do that because it's my own code, and then I don't, like, I could put that thing there, but I tend to put these vet explicit allocators everywhere anyways. At least in this project. Because and the reason for that is, as I'm gonna show here, that I have two allocators. I have a frame allocator, which is sort of like a temp allocator but internal to the library, and then I have the normal allocator, which is based on the one you send in to the library. Here you see I do that. So I'm not consistent with this is, but this is because this is for what the user use. So some of the users of the library will, you know, they will appreciate the default allocator. They don't care. So I, you know, it does that there. But inside the library, I use explicit allocators. And that's just because I must make sure to think about it every time I do an allocation. Like here I load a texture from a file, then I use the frame allocator because I actually don't need the file. I just need to upload it to the GPU. So then I use frame allocator. Down here, I load the image from bytes. Wait, is this? Yes. Okay, that is as s.frame allocator, or it's the same thing. And here I use it again. Do we have some cases where I don't use, where I use the normal allocator? Yeah, these are not very pedagogical. Well, yeah, here's lots of lists inside a shader where I just use the normal allocator, because those need to live, you know, the whole until the thing is destroyed. But yeah. Do I use context allocator ever? No, I don't. Anyways, that's not what we're doing today. We're looking at virtual file system. The reason we want some kind of virtual file system is because when you are making a web build, there is no file system. There is no core OS. There's no nothing like that. So what you need is, you can use, like on web, the fetch API, for example, to fetch API is, you know, it's sort of like what's it called? It's like doing async. It's the new. There was an old thing called an XML HTTP request or something. Whatever. That thing is, people these days use fetch API, but that's for like fetching a file, and it's sort of asynchronous and a bit of a can of worms. But for a small, maybe game where you want all the resources loaded anyways, like maybe there's some gamer jam game, maybe it's better to have a virtual file system, which essentially is a file that is embedded into the game. So the game just includes all the things. And then when you run like load texture from file, then it actually can look in that thing also. Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not gonna happen. Exactly. So we're not making fetch happen. Right. So we have these things here. I've started a bit here. So a virtual file system is, I don't know if this is the best way to do it. It's a list of files, and it's a lookup. And here we will of course have problems with string normalization. I'm not sure what the best way to do it is. Currently I just replace backslashes with forward slashes. And then I'll do that when you want to access a file as well. We will see what the best way is. And then the memory blob, which is just the source data of the virtual file system. And then I was thinking, you create it by, you get a list. Well, maybe I could do this in a better way. So there is a deserialize and a serialize here. These are for fetching a virtual file. So it's essentially like a file on disk, or it's actually a file built into the it's like a blob of memory essentially. So we have that one for serializing it, and then I have this one for deserializing it, and then we have this stuff for creating it. What the hell is create? Oh, this one will be used. So this thing is like when you run the build web script, which is this thing, right? Then it should take a parameter that's like this folder, include it in the build, like, and then it will like munch up that folder into one of these, and then that will use this thing. So it will use this thing and then immediately serialize it. I think that's what should happen. Right. Oh, I also, just before the stream, I tried to look a bit into doing like streaming also to Twitch, because I realized that maybe it would be good for, you know, having more viewers. But if someone has done that, like the double streamy thingy, please let me, like, use link if you have a link to any resources about that, because it all seems very, it almost seems like you either should have like a separate computer that does the with a capture card, or you need to pay for some service, or there is like some local stuff you can run, but it all seemed a bit like finicky. I don't know. That's why I updated OBS and I was doing all that, and I got tired of it. I think this is my second time I tried to do that. The first time and also it's super weird. On YouTube, I have like a bitrate of 9,500 kilobit per second, right? And that was too low, so I upped it to 20,000, right? Because that was like the recommended for like my resolution. Then I look at Twitch and they're like maximum 6,000. I'm like, that's gonna be like potato quality. Or like, or do they mean kilobytes? And then I tried to look up. No, I think they mean kilobit. And I'm like, 6,000 kilobits is maybe if you have a like super duper codec. Potato. Yeah, I don't know. Is all like programming streams on Twitch, is it all potato quality? Because I had higher on YouTube than the maximum for Twitch, and I thought it was a bit potato-y. So I don't know. So I kind of got tired of that and just did the stream on YouTube as usual. Do not making it harder than it is. I don't know what that is referring to, but right. So we need to create a virtual file system. So essentially have a list of paths and data. This is a bit weird. Maybe I can just do this. Files. We do a slice of virtual files, and like that. And then we don't need that anymore. So now this thing here, which used to be, it just needs to, well, I'm trying to figure out a good way to do this. Actually, this procedure is not needed at all, I realize. Why not have fetch? We might look at fetch later. This is just easier for now. Fetch is asynchronous, right? And then you need, that sort of becomes viral into like you need almost to expose asynchronous file loading paths for your whole library, and then I would net on Windows and Linux and all the other platforms. So it's sort of currently the load texture from file is a synchronous call. It waits until it's loaded from disk. If that uses the fetch API, as far as I can tell, you can't just wait for it in a, you could just make it appear synchronous. Yeah, maybe that's possible. Yeah, I haven't looked into it too much. I mean, maybe that's what we should do. I don't know. But it's also like this. I want to use it for streaming, or like streaming so that the same load audio stream from file call works on web. Right. And then that one should probably be asynchronous on web. Yeah, I'm not sure, but we'll just play around like this. Maybe we'll throw this out. We'll see. This is just for fun now. Okay, so I realized we don't need this create virtual file system thing at all. The only thing we need to do is to serialize a virtual file system. And what is a virtual file system in that case? Well, if you look at this, the only thing this uses is a list of files. Well, actually, maybe it needs to, I realize I kind of deleted the normalization of paths here, but we can do that when we write it down. I don't know if that's a good way to normalize paths at all, but so we have the path. We just do it like this. String replace after path, blah blah blah, temp allocator, and then we use that one instead. The path there, pathlen bytes, blah blah blah, pathlen by little. I don't know if this. I'm kind of using the endian stuff here to say just because this will be put as bytes into a bytes slice. In the desktop build, the data can come from the normal file. It doesn't need to be built in at all. There is a load texture from bytes, so you can build it. You can do like in your game load blah 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 and then that thing. And then you can do the load texture from file, this thing. The problem here is that if you use this thing, then you can't make a web build anymore. Then you must always use this thing, right? Or you have some kind of funny asset manager thing. There's different use cases to optimize for here also. There's one is like, okay, you're making a big game. Then you probably have some kind of asset storage file where you figure everything out anyways, and then you probably will be fine. Like you can you can probably do this thing on web and this thing on desktop and whatever. But if say that you're doing like a game jam and you're just hacking away to the desktop and you do this a lot everywhere, load texture from file, and then you want to just make a web build, then everything is broken. And it would be nice to have sort of a way to quickly get the same result, essentially. Maybe that is bad from a sort of like you. Maybe you should expect people to do the most correct thing, but I don't think it's that. It's sort of like in Mscripten, you have the assets parameter where you bake things into the thing. Yeah. So that's what we're doing anyways. So I have made a little serialized file system here that it should take a files is an array of yes, virtual files, and then we remove that one, yes, and we remove that one. So we have an array of files, and we say, okay, we have this many files, and we write that into the a byte array. I don't know if this, I also was thinking, is there a better way in Odin to do this? I don't usually do these things where I write things out manually to a byte stream like this. I'm like, I want to write into this one, right? And I could grow it first and then fetch a slice into it and put we're using the NDN thingy in there. But that flow felt a bit like cumbersome somehow. So instead I just like made a little stack allocated array here, and I write into that, and then I write that one into the thing. I don't know. It doesn't really, it's not that important, but yeah. So that one might work. Let's look at the deserialize. So we have deserialized virtual file system. This one just takes a memory blob, right? And what I was thinking here, we could do this without having too many allocations, because I'm thinking inside for sort of a web build, maybe you don't want to like if you already have the big blob of persistent memory that you're gonna use, that's like, you know, sitting somewhere in the read-only section of that WASM file or the binary, whatever, then can you just use that as sort of where you get the data from. So I was thinking we just take the memory blob and we make this virtual file system, blah blah blah. We say num files is like this. We you know, we're doing this thing, but we're fetching the things instead. So first we get the number of files from there, and then this looks like a bug already. It doesn't advance. Needs to do this right. Like that. And then we make an array of virtual files. Oh, you're welcome, Dizensetsu. Happy you enjoyed the book. Thank you. So we go over the number of files, and then we look at the path length, and we're like, memory, that's the, so we're gonna go over all the files, and they're written one by one. First comes the path. How long is the path? Okay, it's this long. Wait, this doesn't, yes, this works. Path, memory, yes, like that. Yeah. So it gets how long the path is, and then it gets the file size, which is how big the data is, and then the data is just everything up to the file size, and then we continue, and then we add the file to this lookup with this thing here. And what you can note here is that this memory thingy here, what we can do here is this maybe. So we do something like that. We set the memory field here. We might not even need that one, but you know, in there. But that's just like, that's the thing it looks into for the data, so it doesn't duplicate it. And then we return VFS and true, correct. Something like that, maybe. Let's see if this compiles and stuff. Right? And let's see if so currently we use the load texture from bytes here. Let's say that we use load texture from file. This one might be a bit hairy because the executable might not have the correct working directory currently because of how I structured my things. So we have texture there. Launch. You see workspace folder is the bin folder here. Right. That's that picture. Yeah, I might have to rethink a bit these things. But if you do it like this, if I put that picture there, and rerun it now, it should still work because you will find it next to it. That's good. So what this will not work on web. If we like run task basics web, it chug. And it's done. Then we go to this localhost, blah blah blah. You see the picture is in there because I think even we can look in the console here and it says reading file is currently not supported on this platform, failed to load the texture, because it tried to do the usual stuff, right? Because you see, I think this read entire file is just wrapped so that on web it just does this currently. The virtual file system is mostly used to make it possible to get like a bundle of assets on web. That's my idea, at least. We'll see exactly if it can be used for anything more, or if it's even useful. So the first thing we need to do here is somehow, when the build web script runs, which is this one, we need to be able to bundle in that file, this file here. Maybe we should make a little assets folder instead, I'm just gonna try like that. Okay. Compiler params like that. Print usage. Okay, how does this work? My usage is Odin run build web, and then I say which directory name. And then I'm using VS Code because I like having a debugger always. That was my main thing. So often I crash on a random one-off crash and I didn't have a debugger because it was a bit annoying to launch it from within Sublime. I know some people use like rad debugger and bind that to like launch program. But yeah, I think you should always, I think whenever you should by default in development always run from a debugger. I think that's a good idea. But yeah, but the VS Code is more annoying. It's slower and it does lots of annoying things, and the way it works with project files, like the find symbols stuff is much worse, and the many things are worse. So that's, yeah. And I've sometimes used some of the AI features to do like find bugs or do some code reviews and stuff. That has saved me a lot of, like, found bugs and saved me some time. So that has been quite good also. But like I said at the start of the stream, I've looked at Z as well, which is sort of feels a bit Sublime-ish, but it's a bit immature, so I don't think it's useful yet. Yeah, always run inside RadDBG. Yeah, maybe I can look at that again. I just found that it was slightly too annoying to have to do that workflow, so I ended up not using it, and then I was not inside the, like, if there was a bit too much friction with launching the debugger like that. Okay, an extra parameter starting with a dash will be passed on to the Odin compiler. Yeah, Z is great, but it doesn't work. I mean, for example, you see this project here. I have all these debug targets. I set this up in Z. From what I can tell, is the correct way to do it. And then, so this is F4 currently. F5 just reruns the previous one. So this one, like, currently reruns this one, the one I ran most recently. I set that up in Z, and then it just F5 just runs it alternates between two random, like between the most recent one and the one before, and it doesn't just make any sense. So yeah, no, it's fine. We'll discuss. If I don't like discussing something, I just will ignore it. So it's okay. I tend to ignore comments that I don't want to talk about. Right, so what happens here is, okay. I need some way to pass in the essentially, so what we have here is something like this, right? Odin run build web, and maybe we want like the virtual, it's not really a virtual file. I mean, it's just like a bundle assets, bundle folder, maybe like that. And then there's a path. I'm just thinking here of how the thing should look. Else if strings.has prefix a yeah, this blah. How restrictive is itch.io's web environment? I don't think it's restrictive at all. It's an index file with a zip thingy. So that's is fine. So we trim that stuff off, then we get the path right. I kind of want to sometimes to sometimes the VS Code like authorization is really helpful. Sometimes it's not, but you almost have to turn it off because it's the times when it's not helpful is too annoying. It's a bit like, huh. So we have that. Okay, let's find make VS Code project, because in here I make the build the web versions. This is the, when I do this run task, then I have basics web, but this one build basics web, and that's that one. So then you see build and build blah, 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 blah. And here is the project folder. So if I do this bundle folder, no, not that thing, please. Assets. What is it we need here? Yes, exactly, should be name. Then you have that. I think I'm gonna turn off the, how do I do that? Suggestion, I think I did this before. It's a bit too annoying. I don't remember. It's a real, it's too many things, so you kind of give up and then you continue working. Handmade hero in Raylib, is it possible? Yeah, probably. I mean, handmade hero is just mainly when I look, like, you know, I never looked much at I just watched the beginning of that, and then I looked at what the game was towards the end. And when I looked at what the game was towards the end, I think you can do it. I mean, I think Handmade Hero discussed a lot of like under the hood sort of how to get things done yourself. If you use Raylib, then you will of course be at a slightly higher level. So there's so many of the things that Casey does you won't need to do. Like, you just use whatever is in Raylib. And so half the work of the whole series is you won't need to do, because what is handmade? That also a question, right? Handmade, if you look at the Casey stuff, it's like, it seems to be like use only OS APIs and rendering APIs and stuff. But then some people, you know, they're a bit more like, no, you know, it's just like, we didn't use a big game engine, we used to use this little framework or use a program. And then they're like, oh, it's not there's no good definition of it, really. Yeah, I mean, Handmade Hero, I think it was, he wanted to make a game, and I think he quite quickly realized that he was mostly making sort of like the engine part of it, and towards the end he was like, no, you know, I'm not a gameplay programmer, I'm more of an engine guy. So it sort of became that stuff. So it never really got to the, you know, the nitty-gritty gameplay programming part, which I think is, you know, it's not like you can just do the engine and then you can do the gameplay programming part. There's lots of interesting things you would need to do in gameplay programming that it does not talk about. But yeah, Llama Toast asks, what graphics API does Karl2D use? It uses, it has GL, wait, where are we? D3D, here, this file here, GL, OpenGL, and WebGL currently. It supports, like, you can implement more of these depending on what you need on your platform. D3D11 was the first one I did because it's one of the easiest graphics APIs to use. Then I made the OpenGL to get it running on Linux, I think. Well, I actually did OpenGL running on Windows. So I was just like, see if I could get be able to switch between Direct3D and GL like that. And then the WebGL backend, I just copied the GL backend and then changed things until it worked. And then I made the web platform layer. Well, at first I made a web platform layer, and then I started doing the WebGL stuff. The web platform layer is just, using the Odin JavaScript runtime to talk to the web browser. Plans for metal. Yes, once I'm done with all these audio things and some rendering things, maybe metal will happen. We'll see. It's not super important right now because GL works on Mac, but it's good for if you want to have phones or if you want to be slightly more, I would say slightly more, do the right thing on Mac. How easy do you think it would be to do the third renderer on Karl2D? The third renderer usually means that you need multiple render targets, render out information to them, and then pass those render targets into a... I'm not telling you, I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm sure you know these things. Like, for example, I've done deferred shading before, where you in 3D. Of course, this is 2D lib, so that's not a thing. But you can certainly render out multiple render targets. I currently have no support for multiple render targets in a single. Like, that might be a problem. The first problem, that you won't be able to output the multiple render targets at once from one render call, from one draw call or something. So that's not really supported. And then what more have we? And then you need to be able to, then you need to pass them in as multiple textures to an assemble that a render sort of a draw call that assembles it all from those drawn render target render textures. That I think should work. So it probably won't work straight off the box. But that would be interesting. Maybe I should do like because I find that stuff interesting. Like maybe, for example, doing like output a normal, a G buffer with the normals, and then you have some geometry in there, and different things, colors, and then now it wouldn't work right now, but you could probably do it on a fork. But I think the draw to multiple render targets, that I would maybe have to look at, because it might be a bit too much to poke around with. I'm gonna get some more coffee. Wait. Okay. No, it's fine. Don't worry about distracting the stream. I always get distracted. So we were writing that make VS Code project file. So we have bundle here. So we rerun the make VS Code project. Okay. And then we run basics. Well, not that one, but we try running the web version. Oh, not that one. This one, basics web. You see here it did a bundle stuff. Unknown flag, bundle folder. Build web. All right, because these are in the wrong order. How do I disable? Let's go disable suggestions. Accept. Inline suggest enable. Maybe it's this one. Oh no. Is that? I will see. We'll see what happens. So now it will not. Now it will. These were in the wrong order, so it went in here first. So it passed it onto the compiler, which was not what I meant it to do. So now we do run task basics web chug, and now it said basics/assets. This is good. Who said that? Who was that? All right, it says it there. Yes. Basics/assets. Okay. Why is it? Sorry. D3D11 looks more complicated than GL. Am I missing something? I'm not proficient in GL, but when you're used to configuring state machine, at least this is how I imagine what's going on. It's easier. I mean, if you think it's easier, then that's fine. I find D3D11 a lot easier than OpenGL. Like, for example, we can just create texture. Let's just pick a random procedure here. Create texture. Okay, this one actually calls this one. So there is on the device a procedure called create texture 2D. It takes the texture description that where you just fill these things out. So you just look through this struct and fill things out. So you just look at this thing and then you look at the parameters and then you look at that. That might be similar in OpenGL, so that's fine. But for example, when you're supposed to draw later, like this one, like that, I can promise that, like maybe some of these are easy in GL, but you know, here at least it's always like, okay, set constant buffer, and then you sort of have you look at the parameters of that, or maybe you have like it's not just like so often in GL it's just like, okay, here's a random enum that's just some untyped thing, and then it's like some parameter, and then you have to pray to the lords that you pick the right one. I would say, to me at least, OpenGL is almost impossible to write without looking at a tutorial for knowing what to combine with what, like which random enum constant to combine with some value, right? And with D3D11, I can just like, oh, I found this procedure, it has this name. Okay, it seems to take one of these things. Oh, there is a struct parameter, or I fill out the struct, I guess like this, and then it works. I can stay in the editor and just look at those, like the bindings, and it usually works out fine. So, and also when I did the GL backend, usually when I do OpenGL stuff, I tend to have to look a lot at like how to do things, and it takes a lot of time. But since I already had a D3D11 backend, what I did was just like, I looked at that one for each procedure, I looked at it, and I was like, how would I do this thing kind of in OpenGL? And that was a lot easier than doing the other way around, like starting with GL and then, because then I need to do that sort of like figure random stuff out. So to me, if you want to make a renderer, and you don't need it, like if you need to use super modern features, you can try D3D12 or Vulkan or whatever. But if you don't need super modern features, then you will do yourself a favor by starting with D3D11, because it's the easiest, it's the best graphics API for learning rendering programming. It's the easiest one. You have to look up the fewest things. You be the least amount confused. And when you have that backend working, you can make a GL backend and have the D3D one as a reference. And there's so many things that are a lot easier to understand once you've done that. Because, for example, and I love this example, in D3D11 you have the concept of a, what's it called? The input layout. So the input layout in D3D11 is that something it's a thing you make. So an input layout is essentially, let's see if I find it here, set input. So the input layout is like, how are the inputs to the shader laid out? And that is an array of input element descriptions. What's that? Well, it's just like there's some name, some index, some format. It's quite easy. You can look this up on the Microsoft documentation if you're unsure what they mean, but at least you have a starting point, sort of. So you look at those, you fill that out, and then you create an input layout. And then before you use your shader, you set that input layout, so it knows, okay, here are the things. Yeah, I was saying that D3D11 is, if you want to start graphics programming and you have Windows, D3D11. Just make everything in that, and then when that is working, you can try making a GL or a Vulkan or a Metal or a WebGL backend, like as a alternative one, and use the D3D11 one as reference. But anyway, so you have the input layout here, right? You created it and stuff, and then you just set input layout. Right. This is IA's input assembler, set input layout. It's quite easy, right, to like create input. If you look at this, like, oh, it's a list of input element description. It has a format and a name. Okay, right. And then you go to, and then, so if you start with this, and then you like try to implement your OpenGL run backend later, then you'll be like, oh, there was that input layout thing. How do I do that in OpenGL? Then you're like, okay. So in OpenGL, if you start with OpenGL and you want to do this, then you have like a lot of fuzzy, like it's some like, I just want to set the input layout, like how the things. The way you usually do that is using what's called a vertex array object. Here we have the first problem. The name, it's just some random name. It's the vertex array object. I don't know. It still doesn't make any sense to me, and I've looked at OpenGL so many times over so many years. So to do the same thing in OpenGL, you're like, okay, first I think this is in load shader, right? Yes, GL load shader. So first we generate a vertex array, then we bind it, and then we loop over the inputs, which is my description of the inputs. This is from my description of the shader. And then you have to enable the vertex attribute array. And then you have to GL vertex attribute pointer, register, num components, and then there's lots of parameters here and stuff. And figuring this stuff out it's always like you always mess it up. And then when you draw later, I think you set bind vertex array. Yeah, then you bind it. So that part is similar, right? But With D3D11, it was much more obvious. It's the input layout of something, and you kind of figure. So I have never in my life before I think understood vertex array objects and like when to use them so quickly as when I used the D3D11 renderer backend as a reference. And I was like, what maps closest to input layout? I was like, well, this vertex array object thingy, I guess. So then I used that. So I just think of that as my input layout. I kind of filter out the word VAO, vertex array object. Yeah. So that was my little rant about that's just one example of like, I think if you start with GL and you need to figure those things out, it will be much less obvious what it is you actually should do. And it's, as you saw, it's like you just need to call this enable, which is a random function with a random name that has no connection to, like, it's not like, oh, you make a list of input element descriptions and then you create the thing and it says which kind of thing you want and then you're done. So yeah, anyways. I think freeze 3x just use the one that is most fun right now, like the language. Yeah, I've used GL so many times, and it does not come naturally to me. It's just this random. It just feels like a random pile of things that nothing fits together properly. But that's just me, maybe. But yeah, freeze 3x. You're asking if you should C or C++ or Odin. I think it depends on what you want to do. Just try with one of them a bit. Try it for one evening. See if you like it. And then try another, or just use one each for a week, maybe. Try each for a week and see which one you like most. It's usually, it's gonna take 20 years anyways to find a favorite. Like people who's starting out programming who seem to be like, oh, this is my favorite language. Usually it's because they haven't actually tried much. They just want to be a fan of something. That's how I see it. So this path looks a bit weird. Basics assets. I wanted to be example basics assets. Why is it like that? So src here. Yes. So maybe it should be like that. Make VS Code project. But you see, these two statements are a bit contradictory. I'm not trying to make you look bad, but you say that you prefer vertex array objects, VBOs, and it's easy for you, but then you're not sure what a vow really is. It's just like it, and that's the thing, right? It's very unclear, even for people who used it for a long time. Like, it's just, I use it for this, I guess that's the correct thing. It seems like ill-defined somehow. It is probably well-defined, but it's just like, it's not, it just feels like, I feel like I never truly understand things. Like, if I take a break from it for 2 years and come back and look at it, I will be like, I don't remember anything. I can't just look at it and be like, oh, it's probably, it's this thing. It will just be like, I have to look it all up again or something. Yes, OpenGL is super old, and it's. I mean, I don't think even GPUs existed when it started, right? Or did it? I might be wrong about that. It's at least, but it's so old that too much have changed since it got started. Okay, we're basics. Well, let's see here now. Example basic assets. Okay, good. That's good. So we have a bundle folder there. This is, and then we go back to this. Well, we were in here, and then we say here we say bundle folder is a string. Bundle folder. We remove that little colon there, and we go down here, and now this is the next step here. We must somehow, where are we? We are in the build. We need to import // virtual file system. Maybe we can call it VFS. Hey. Not just too proficient. Yeah. Hey, Jerry. I'm just not too proficient with graphics API. Yeah. I mean, I tried out OpenGL stuff. Like when how old am I now? 37 maybe. I think I tried it out first, like for real when I was 19 maybe. I had like bought the OpenGL Super Bible and I just did some stuff. Felt like it was quite fun, but I don't know. It's more of a process over many years until you finally find something where you want. I was never the kind of person who wanted to do like very I wasn't that interested in like rendering programming to do like, I'm gonna make my own super fantastic renderer. So I more learned it over bits here and there until I needed to use this. This is the first time I use rendering APIs for something actually useful. Like otherwise it's just been toys. It's like toy engine, little project that no one used, and I gave up on. Karl RTX. It's hard to say. Karl-TX. STL-free GPU. Yeah, you can start with that. That's a bit. I mean, it's an abstraction, but I would say like what you can do is also start with something like Raylib, and then look at like at some point maybe you need to change what the rendering code does, and you go in and have to look at the GL calls in there, and then eventually you write your own stuff. But my library is also, it will be quite like you can start with that, and then since everything is in Odin, you can go in and look at the backend, and then maybe eventually you just start changing things in there. But if you want 3D, yeah, maybe STL-free GPU or something like that, or Sokol is pretty popular. I don't know. We'll see how Sokol does with. Sokol was very popular, and then a lot of people tried STL-free. I'm not sure what's gonna happen there. Okay, so now we need to do very funny stuff here. How expansive is your 2D API going to be? I don't know. Like, it will be similar to Raylib, I would say, for 2D games. But maybe We'll have some features that really doesn't related to shaders and input layouts, so that you can control a bit more the layout of vertex inputs. There is currently circles, squares, lines, and textures. It will probably add some kind of, there's a triangle as well. I think I will add some kind of polygon. I need to get done this sound stuff and then get to that. Okay, let's focus. Let's focus. Now I'm gonna focus. Okay, I'm focusing now. Wow. So let's see here. So we need to serialize a virtual file system. So what we need to do then is, if bundle folder is not an empty string, then we need to do vfs.serialize file system, and we need a bunch of files. We'll figure those out soon. Bundle folder. Right. VFS data. So then we need to walk this os.directory walk. Can we? Is there like a walker create path? Does that one do what I think it does? Walk returns the next file info in the iterator. Files are listed in breadth first order if there's blah blah blah. So will this thing, I think it will be, we can look at what it does. I think it will be I'm trying to say words here. I think it would be recursive, right? Let's see what it does. Init path. Yeah. And then we walk. Next, pop front, set error, directory, blah, blah, blah. Redirectory. Open. Next. So yeah, it seems like it's recursive. That's what we want. Okay. Walker. If not file info, okay, I guess we need to like os the walker error. Is that how you get the? All right. Okay, sure. Wait, how do I? Maybe there is a nice, there is a, okay, I should, that's, yeah, this is how I should do it. Of course. It's like an iterator, like that. Or handle error as we go. Right, maybe we do that. Path error. Error path is failed. Bundle, what's it called? Bundle folder failed walking. Good. And then Like if it's a directory, we skip it. Wait. Skip a directory. That doesn't skip it. That skips a file that they start with .git. I'm like, huh? Oh well, info.type equals directory. If info.type is directory, continue. Folder. Folder, thank you. And then we need to, what is this? This needs all the data. So we need to load the file here. I just realized something. Can I use this? I'm trying to think if. I mean, this is. I don't think load directory is. If I remember correctly, it's not. Recursive. I think I actually I've written this thing. I PR this in. I don't think it will be recursive because this is a name. So I'm trying to think if I should just use this for now. I think it might be better to continue what we're doing. Because we're immediately going to be like, okay, now we need recursive. And then like, then what? So let's just continue this. I think this is the correct thing to do. Always start to read entire file. Yo, Nico Bellic. Always to read entire file. So read that thing. Still using Win 10. Yeah, this computer can't run Win 11. It doesn't have a TPM chip. I think I can install one on the motherboard manually. It's a desktop. It's an i7 CPU, but they was the last i7 they ever made that didn't have a TPM chip. So it's just like I'm not gonna throw away this computer. It works perfectly fine. It's the thing, you know. You might need to change GPU quite often if you want to play modern games, even although you might not anymore because it's too expensive. But CPUs you don't need to change that often. Yeah, Microsoft promoting e-waste. I agree. I really like the thing where they like trying to make people buy a new computer and throw a perfectly fine one, like with pop-ups and stuff. I think it's not okay. But yeah. I live in the EU, so Windows 10 was discontinued this last year, but in EU they got one more year because some EU lawmakers were angry. Yeah, I have Linux on my laptop also, which I used to test Linux things, but read entire file. Let's focus on this. Data is this. Data error. If data error is not nil, and t.e print ln. Like that maybe. Just continue. And then we have the data there. So maybe we'll make a little array here. Files is a dynamic array of vfs.virtual file. Then we append to files a virtual file, data equals data and path, and this one might be a bit funny. Like path resolving is not that fun because you're like, how are people gonna write the path in the gameplay code later? And also, look at this file info. Then we have the name. But that won't do because I kind of want the directory it's in. But the full path would be like, I think that would be the whole. You can put that for now, but that's not going to work, I think. Okay. Fail serializing VFS. like that. Then we have the data here, right? Oh. Of course, this one just returns right. This one doesn't fail. Well, it could fail on an allocation thingy, but yeah. Let's just do this for now. See what happens. Wow, he got angry. Uh-huh. These are all wrong. Here you go. We got 47 kilobytes. Let's see, how big is this file? It is 45. Yeah, that's correct. It says here. You like my random Swedish here on the chat? Mål, top fans. Things that happen. What does it say here? Chatta. Chatta. That's the funny Swedish. Instead of like, they just imported the word chat and made it into a verb. So to chat is, and a chat is en chatt, and to chat in an online chat like that is chatta. Okay, we have the file here. Now we just need to write it out so it can be read by the game. I think we'll have to write to disk and then write it out again. And to do that, I think we have the dir here. Then we do like this: os.write entire file. It should be like we're just putting it into the source folder. Well, no, we have the build folder right there. Blah 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 blah. Build there. Here. This is where it's going. Okay, so we do this. Maybe we just move this whole thing down to here. Like that. Then we'll throw it into the build there. Build web there. Should we put it in there or in, where should we put it? Because so what I'm doing here is, if you look at bin, no, examples, basics, bin here, there's a build directory and there's a web directory in here. The only thing this is used for is to add this little wrapper that imports this one. Okay, maybe, yeah, let's do that. Let's put it in the folder. Just realize that I will figure that out. I'm just thinking of how to actually include the stuff into your game later. Bund asset bun asset bundle like that, and we say print. We say here build directory. No, I haven't put any of this on GitHub yet. I think maybe it's on a branch, but data that write bundle if write bundle error is not nil, e print failed writing right. Let's see, look in here. Here's a file. That's good. There is no API for the user at the moment. That's what I'm gonna figure out next. We're doing this, figuring this out. This is a experimental feature, kind of. We'll see. So we have that file there now. So now we have this. This is the example, right? How do we? I was thinking either we have a constant. I think either we have a constant that brings in. I was thinking maybe you could have a constant in sort of inside Karl2D that sort of takes this one, but I realized that relative path will be weird because you don't know. If you do hashtag load inside, if you do this data load, this is relative to the file. So if that's inside Karl2D, then the path will be weird because I don't know where the user put the library and stuff. So with that in mind, let's just try this. Data load assets bundle. I mean, we could have something like, because the hashtag load is always relative to the file currently being compiled. Yeah, old and shared is if but this must work for everyone, right? So we can't just assume where things are. But we could have a default relative path, like we could do something like this. Because the funny thing is, if you do a hashtag load inside Karl2D, then where it looks is relative to this file. So that will be different than the example. The example has the build folder next to it with the file inside. Assets, let's just try this. Assets bundle path is build/assets bundle. Let's just try that, because then we can do like this. If that's what the script always does, then that will work. Right, and then we need to look here in init options. This is a struct. Maybe here we can do like assets bundle data is a U8, like that. Because then we can do this. Assets bundle init options. What's it called? Options. Options equals right. Also need to make sure that this only actually happens. I think you can do like this. When exists, when I think maybe you can do like this. Is that a valid constant? I'm not sure. So let's try compiling the basics example. Okay, that worked. Let's try compiling it in web mode. Run task basics web. Chug 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 chug. Okay, let's look inside here. main.wasm is this big. If we remove this, if we replace that with this, and rerun that, does it get smaller? Wait, let me just do this for starters. Wait, is it even running the... I was running the wrong... No? Running the correct one. In web, blah, blah, blah. I thought this one was like... Oh, now it goes smaller. Okay. That's good. That means something is in there now. You see. There's some data in there. Good. So we have that. And let's import the virtual file system here. Import VFS file system. And then maybe, I don't know where in this init proc, but we can do it at the bottom here. Or maybe it's good to do it early in case. I don't think anything here uses a relative path, but you know, that's all fine. Frame allocator, platform. Maybe we can do it here, or you can do it here. If options dot is not nil, I think nil is a valid value for that kind of thing. Slice. Then we say vfs.deserialize virtual file system. Now use that allocator. Let me see here. So I had that file. There's a bit of a naming thing, you know, I kind of want to do that, but I've already imported that. But that's usually a sign that you've done, set things up in maybe a bit of a weird way. I feel like the package should either be named just virtual file system and have simpler names in here. Currently it's a bit, yeah. What if we just do this then? Is this how it should be? Maybe. Serialize, deserialize, and then you just do virtual file system dot deserialize. Boop, boop, like that. And then VFS, okay. And if that's all good, if VFS okay, then we set s.vfs like that. The only reason I threw this out into a separate package is because the build script needs to import it. So that's why I did this. So the build script can do these things, so we can run this procedure. Sort of it. Oh yeah, this package here. I don't love this. It's a bit weird. Let's see what we do about that later. Okay, is that all good? Yeah, that one is sad now, but that's given that we just renamed the whole thing, didn't we? We just do this. We go down here. We say virtual file system dot serialize. Something like that. So now we have this data hopefully deserialized and nice inside the game. And now when we do load texture from files, we're sort of slowly getting there, right? Now we have read entire file. On the default one is this one, read entire file system web. Looks like this. There's this annoying thing with the new, like the new core OS package you can't import at all if it's not supporting your platform. So you have to split it out to files whenever you want to use it. Because you can put an import in a when block. So you have to do that. I think it runs a bit contrary to the idea of Odin that you can always import things, and as long as you don't use anything from the package, it's sort of it's not linked in, you know, none of the like essentially if you have a platform where you don't need, something is not supported, you can still import it and just not use the procedures. That's how it usually has been, but not with this package. So it's a bit like not my, it's a bit inconsistent to me. Let's just make a little global variable for the VFS for now. Like here. It can be a pointer, that's fine, I think. Or it doesn't really matter in this case. It's just some, well, okay, we can make it a pointer. Init. Oh, okay. I'm just thinking of, I have this file for the web stuff, right? And I'm thinking how to, I could feed in the VFS here. But then let's just try this. The overall architecture, you're asking, of the virtual file system, or in general? I mean, in general, it's a platform independent part, and then we have some rendering backends and some platform backends and some audio backends and stuff that are implemented sort of using these interfaces here. But yeah, it's I don't know what to say. I think I have a little description on if you go to the GitHub repository. Here, if you go here, I think there is some architecture notes here on the GitHub. It's not super up to date, but it says some stuff there. The link, it's linked in the description, the GitHub repository. So we have the VFS. Okay. The problem right now is that I can't look up with my path. I hate these names. Yeah, for now I'm trying out VS Code. We'll see if it stays or not. It annoys me a bit sometimes. Oh well, let's just have these ugly names right now. Let's focus on the right thing. Path to file index. This thing. Like if I can show you. If we do like this. Do FMT in here? No. Port core FMT. Maybe I use the log file. Let's just try that one. I'll show you the path. Why it might go wrong. Then we open the build, and then we look into the tools here. Wait, don't I? I'm trying to think here. What's happening? It does rerun the build web script there. And then nothing seems to happen. Is it gonna be tree-like or DB-like FS? It's just a list of files with a lookup currently. We'll see if it's... We'll see exactly how it works. Okay, this probably failed, is my guess. Log error failed deserializing VFS. Yes, it failed. Then we can look at this. Where might it have failed? Fun, always fun to debug web things. Can I do that even? I don't think so. I mean, I could run this on the... What happens if I run this on the... Do a normal build? Yeah, that works, but that's just because it loads the file correctly. Does it also say... Fail deserialization? Okay, so if we do this, we just step into here. Okay, now we're in there. Okay, so we got the num files. There should be 1. Yes, good. Then we go over the number of files. Get the path length 33. Path is... we'll see. Valid characters in string. That looks wrong. File size. Wow. Wait, this is... No, that's correct. I did it write it down incorrectly. Pathlen. I put it in. File size bytes. Path. Wait, does it never put in the path itself? Haha. Well, that's a problem. You see. Append res. How do you get just the bytes? I think you transmute it path to a slice of bytes, the path, then you Well, then you're done. All right. Oh, you also, well, that's not how the syntax is even. Like that. Let's see if this worked better. Wait, no, okay, no, that didn't work because it didn't rerun the the building of the asset bundle. Currently only happens when it runs the. Just want to see if this comes out correctly now. Still nothing, huh? Path len 33. Path is valid characters. The issue is that it fails. It fails to deserialize it. I'm not sure what's wrong with it. Okay, now it actually got the correct. Is this one just... Wait. Is this wrong? Path then. This skips the path len here. No, that's correct. Maybe it works now. Maybe so. Oh, there you go. So one reason I might not like to use this, like, you know, I wanted to use Visual Studio Code because I wanted a debugger, but the debugger, it doesn't work so well. Like, what's path? Okay, now it worked, but it just doesn't work so well. Okay, we saw the name there. Exam. I would like the name to just be this. Or this, maybe. So that's gonna be a problem. We can look at that later. We can for now just assume that it's gonna have that name. Okay, and then we do this. If VFS file okay is VFS dot path to file index path. Also might need to normalize this path so it always works okay. Then we return VFS dot files VFS file index dot data. True. Right. And this of code is of course not done. I hate this code. Like it's all a mess. Like this global here with. But I can't just pass it in here because that changes it on the other platform. Whatever. I'll call VFS state right now. I'm gonna look over this. I know it's a mess, but it's gonna be fine. Okay, good. I don't know why I recompile that. That doesn't even compile on basics web. Should run. That. Rerun it. There's one thing left to do is go to Karl2D, and in the init proc we say set VFS maybe. And now we go here and we have a look in the old console. Yeah, and that won't work currently because the in here this path is wrong, right? So it was like examples. What was it? Examples, basics, assets, like that I think it was. That's not how I want it to work, but we're just gonna see if it works if we do that. Here you go. That was a lot of work. Yeah. So now we ran this one. To the user, it's just that what they needed was to supply the assets bundle thingy. It's a bit of a dance. This it's like, okay, it was so to summarize what happened here is that the build web file, the script that makes the web build, which is sort of the thing that assembles all this stuff in the puts the index file and all that one also looked through the assets folder and took all the files in there and made a binary file, put it in build called asset bundle that has the path to all of them plus the data, and then I put this thing inside here that was like the default place where it should end up, and then load that, and then I pass it into the library like this, and that one then deserializes that data here, sets it. This is a hack currently, this set VFS stuff. I'm not sure exactly how it should work. It sets it here and then read entire file, which is used on both web and non-web reads it. Of course, this could also be used you could make it so that the non-web platforms can use this too if you want to bundle everything into a file. In my experience, it's better to do that yourself, maybe. The deserialization is just, if you look what it does, it takes the memory and it turns it into this thing where it sort of extracts each data and path so that you have this thing that you can use for lookup inside the read entire file. That's what it does. I'm not sure you want to do this on desktop. Like, in my experience, you might want like a custom. You might want a custom. For example, I did this in Cat and Onion, right? I had the whole game in one executable. I mean, here we have. Do I have like a release build? Here's a release build. This is the whole game, 57 megabytes, one executable. That was just Raylib. The way that worked was that I think it's this file called assets builder. Thank you, VS Code. That's not what I wanted. And this thing went through, it made like textures, levels, fonts, and then it made this file called, where is it? Game assets. It generates this file. Here I have a enum for every single texture in the game. These are all the textures in the game, and the levels, and the fonts, and the sounds. And then I just had a thing that was like, if I'm in embed assets mode, then it hashtag loads it here. And all that is caked into the executable that way, which would also work for web builds. And if you go to down here, there is it also generates this version where embed assets is not true, and then it just has the path. And then when the asset storage thingy here wants to load, for example, you'd be like, okay, how do you load? Yeah, I think it loads most of things at runtime, at start. It like goes over all textures, load texture. Where is that? It goes here, and that will where is the embed assets thingy? Oh yeah, when embed assets, then it does load text from memory, otherwise it loads all the textures like this. And then I think there might be a hot reload thingy somewhere in here. Reload all. Here, this is what happens on a hot reload. So that's why I even want, like, the reason I want to not embed sometimes is because of reloading. I want to iterate on things while I work. So then in reload all is run in hot reload mode when embed assets isn't true. So then it does all that. It just reloads textures for using the path. It doesn't care about this. This data won't even be there. It just has this without data. So that's what I did for that game, which worked fine. And I think that's probably what you want to do, because you're gonna have different needs with hot reloading, with exactly how you want to set it up. You're gonna have different needs. However, if you're just doing a game jam and you're like, I just want to read a file from disk, I want to load a texture from disk, or even the thing that sparked all this is the following: load audio stream from file. This one is a bit finicky. Audio stream, what is that? That's like music. You stream a tiny bit of it at a time into memory, and then you play that, and then you stream in the next. So you don't load the whole 6 megabyte song. You load a few kilobytes or something at a time. That's tricky on web, because it's like, well, you need to load pieces at a time. Okay, maybe you can do that with a fetch API. Maybe. But then, yeah. But if you don't do that with a fetch API, then you're like, okay, where does my audio stream come from? Well, you could embed the whole thing into your game, into your WASM file. That, of course, is a bit weird, because you sort of then streaming from memory, which is weird, right? You're like, I'm gonna stream this song. It's already in memory, but that's sort of what the bundling would mean in that case, that the song is actually bundled. It's just like for a game jam thingy, really, right? Yeah. anyways, I'm not sure exactly what the best way is. I think it's good to supply like something simple, but that's also something simple that doesn't confuse people. For example, like in Raylib, where you just have load texture from file. The thing Raylib does is when you do a web build in Raylib, it uses mscripten, where you can bundle things, so you can do load texture from file. You can do that. Like you can load it from a file name, and if you have bundled that folder with your files, then that will just work. But yeah, this is not the simplest problem, these things. It's the Raylib thing, you know, it will just like if you have a song, it will do exactly what I said. It will stream from memory. Like it will be like, we put the whole song into the WebAssembly file or in a data file that is loaded, and then it just streams from there using like some fake libc thing that mscripten does. Since we're not using mscripten here, we can do things in a slightly more nice ways. Have less issues from not having mscripten, but we have to think about these things ourselves. Anyway, pretty cool. It loaded the picture from that. The path here, I would need to think about. The path should be just asset / the file name in this case, because it should be relative to, well, this doesn't make any sense, this part, because the game doesn't really know anything about where the folder is. There is streaming in the sense that, so the way the streaming works is it can load an audio stream from file, and that will currently not implemented on web at all, because it just uses CoreOS to open a file handle, and then it reads some stuff, and then it uses Vorbis, OGG kind of, and it reads that, and it also opens up a audio buffer that is not very big. It's just a few thousand audio mix sample rate. Okay, it's 3 seconds worth of audio in it. Moo cat can represent moo. No, so Odin web build stuff does not support CoreOS. If you even import CoreOS on web, it won't compile. That's there is no way. That's a difference. The old CoreOS package, it was possible to import on web, but it just like many procedures kind of errored out when you use them. This one, if you even try to import it on web, compilation error. So you have to sort of, I have an audio stream web, which currently does nothing. It errors on the first load. I don't need any procs from OS, like they just, well, on desktop it just uses os.open to open a file, and it uses that to stream in. It uses that file to stream in the data, because this file here is stored inside the stream data here, and then later when we update the stream, which is here, it goes through, it checks for the playing buffer, which is, so it's essentially it's the same kind of audio buffer that a normal sound uses. A normal sound, say that it's a 2-second sound, and it has a 2 seconds buffer that it can play. what the stream does is it just has a 3-second buffer that it sort of uses as a circular buffer to stream data into from disk, and it just continues playing that. So it's just looping around the buffer. That's what this audio system is doing. It's just looping around the buffer, and the audio streaming system is just putting more and more data into there. That's all it does. So it essentially checks if the remaining data on the playing audio buffer is less than half the stream buffer. So if it's less than half full, then it will put in more. Which is, if it's less than 1.5 seconds left, then it will put in some more. I don't know. That's just that number is totally arbitrary. And this just, it does like it uses STB Vorbis to decode stuff, and then it seeks in the file. Well, in this case, it was because it looped, but it will read more and more stuff from the file here until it has enough to decode some data, and then it will do that. Then it will do the mono and the stereo and the stuff. Yeah, I think Socal Audio also do. So what does Socal Audio do? Is it yeah, some kind of So I experimented with that a lot because initially I was like, oh, the audio stream didn't really. And initially it was like a separate, like there was like audio buffer and audio stream buffer, and then I realized, oh, maybe I can just play around a bit with this, and I was quite happy when I was able to, because the mixer then just like the mixer just looks at playing audio buffers and just mixes those in. It doesn't care. It doesn't even know it's a. The mixer has no concept of an audio stream. It's just like playing audio buffer, and yeah. Yes. Anyways, we shall see what I do. I think I need to. I have the texture there working. The path is wrong. That's one thing. The path is not the one I want. Not sure exactly what I should do about that. I maybe need to strip the front part of it somehow. How's latency? Do you mean on the audio? Depends. I think the latency 's maybe around 50 milliseconds right now. But I could probably get that down if I use WAS. On Windows, I use WAS API instead of wave out, and tweak the, like, essentially what you want to do is you want to have the smallest possible sort of buffer for the mixer that doesn't, where the backend doesn't get starved. That's sort of what you need. It doesn't require a separate audio thread because the audio backends have a thread essentially. Like if you use wave out on Windows, it has a thread and you push data to that. So that one is continuously playing. You can run the mixer on the main thread. It mixes in some stuff and then it hands it off to the backend, which has a thread. I'm thinking of the mixing maybe should be possible to thread. I haven't really gotten to that. I've talked about this multiple times in the past that it's currently not threaded. I think I can do it. It's just when you stop and start playing sounds, I must make sure there is no weird threading errors there. But like play sound, this thing, for example, this one pokes at this playing audio buffers thingy, and if that one is iterated by a thread, then you know stuff like that. but that I think is solvable. And then stuff like set volume also might interfere with the thread. But we'll see exactly how I do that. Let's see if we can get this VFS stuff to work on, because currently it crashes on, well, it doesn't crash, it doesn't compile on. This is just for the record. This is just hacked together stuff right now. It's not gonna be like this. Look, this random, I think, in the end. So. We have, if we do that, I think this one now uses the one from, like if we remove this code, right? Let's just try doing this. Yeah. Yeah, I see. So now this desktop example also got this picture from the virtual file system bundle. I think virtual file system is a bad name, by the way. I think an asset bundle, or whatever you want to call it, is a better name. Because it's I'm not trying to have, like, it's just a lookup with a name to a file. It's just a little thingy. Anyways. I know it's just an asset bundle. It's just an embedded asset bundle, maybe you could call it. Anyways, it can be like this for now, like that maybe. I'm gonna push this to a branch and think a bit about what to. This is sort of experimental, anyways. This is all the fun stuff we did today. It's not true. That's more or less equivalent to Godot style res, right? Yeah, maybe. I think we're on a branch here. Yes, we are. Some asset bundle. Virtual file system stuff. Proof of concept. Asset bundle virtual file system. Like that. Push that. If I know I can find the. I have actually bought Karl2D.com. So, you know, it's a bit slow, but it actually just redirects to the. We'll make a website at some point, but if you ever want to get to the repository quickly, you can type Karl2D.com. Very good. Oh, that was the wrong one. That was some Wayland crap. What's this? What happens if we do this? Yeah, you can, if anyone wants to look what we did here, we can look at this, compare here. This is the full diff of the stuff. Do we have Odin TLD yet? It's gonna be a very weird TLD with lots of like weird religion things, and then you have a lang.odin, right? Karl2D. No, I don't know. Anyways, I think that's it for today. I'm tired now. I will think about this. I mean, before we stop, we can just say that I'm not sure if this is the correct way to do these things. You know, I looked at, for example, the cat and onion stuff, and there I use this manually made like load from memory stuff when I needed it, which is what you can do on web as well. The only thing is you can't do that for, I think the thing that sort of sets me down this path a bit is the audio streaming, that you will write your game and you will put in your music and all that, and then you want it to work on web, and then it doesn't. Maybe I will look at streaming of using maybe I will look at the fetch API stuff. The problem with the fetch API stuff is, so fetch API is this JavaScript thing where you can request files asynchronously. So yes, we could do that. We could do that. We could make it into a synchronous thing where we just wait for the thing to be done somehow. Like load texture from file, and then you just, in order to make the API not go crazy, because if you make that one suddenly asynchronous, then you must kind of make it asynchronous on desktop as well, and that changes the API, right? So if you have load texture from file, for example, load texture from file. Load texture from file. If this one was asynchronous, maybe you would need like some other return value here that is just a thing you can use that will later resolve to the thing. You have all this promise stuff, and I don't know. It's a very big can of worms. So you could make it so that the fetch API stuff on web becomes synchronous, which means that it just waits until it's done. That would maybe work fine for this kind of stuff. But for audio streaming, if you're streaming in a small pieces of a song at a time, then if you made it synchronous, then I mean you will get huge stalls all the time, because your game needs to like it will not work properly, because you're essentially waiting for a web request in the middle of your game loop. That's many milliseconds. You're gonna get a stall, so that won't work. Loading from files should always be async, really. Probably not as relevant now with SSDs though. Well, I think, yeah, I would say that it depends. Like if you have a game where you just load everything at start, a small game for example, you just have the whole game loaded from start, then yeah. But the thing here is that I don't want this to be just a small game jam lib. I want it to be something you can ship a full 2D, professional 2D game with. That's the main end goal, but then it should be nice for the game jam stuff. And that's those are a bit in conflict, but I hope I can resolve that somehow. If you want to have asynchronous loading, then you can do it. You can make a thread, asset loader thread, and use like if you want that on desktop, I mean, you can just load from disk os.read file on a thread, right? And then when it's done, you can do load texture from bytes. Like you can return that when that is done, you get it back, for example, to the main thread or something like that, and then you just load it, and it's going up to the GPU. And then you've sort of made async loading yourself, which I think is the way to do it, because if I program in async loading into the library, then I make so many assumptions of how people want to do it and what the API should be, and it's gonna make the library much harder to get started with, because I wanted it to be easy to get started with, but easier to ship game. And it's not hard to just read file from this kind of thread and then and then when that's done, pipe it into the library and load it. That's not, I wouldn't say that's, I would say that I would prefer doing that than to the library always having lots of asset loading threads and stuff, because that just makes it so much harder to get started with, and also you have less control of how it's done. Anyways, that's how I see it. So what we're doing here in general is that I want to finish. I have an issue called audio support here. This one looks like it's done. It has a Mac backend, Linux backend, and I fixed some mono sound issues. And you see I checked all this. Streaming of music works on everywhere except on web. Currently completely disabled. Should mixing happen on a thread? Maybe I'll resolve that later. More file formats than WAV. I can resolve that later. This is the problem. I haven't checked that one because I can stream music on web, and I'm not really sure how to resolve this. Okay, here is a completely different, like, imagine we didn't do anything about what we did today, because currently you can just use #load to load a file into the it becomes part of your executable, and that works on web too. So the load from file doesn't work on web currently. This one works, this one doesn't. Load from bytes works. Load from file does not work on web. What we could do, I realize, is just to have load audio stream. You have load audio stream from file. We're gonna have a load audio stream from bytes, which is just implemented differently. So instead of having a file handler or anything, it just has a byte thingy, and that can be used on web as well. And it's just like your game code on web. You would have to be like, oh, if we're on web, then we use then we #load, or if we're not, then we maybe not do that. But maybe that's the best idea. Maybe that's the simplest thing that doesn't require any of this stuff. I don't know. You can, because that's how it works already with textures and sounds. These audio streams, I haven't really done that. In the past, the Vorbis stuff, the OG loading didn't work on web because there wasn't web. It wasn't set up, all of it. But recently, in the next version of Odin, which should come out next week, maybe in the end of next week, that will be fixed. It's already fixed in the master branch of Odin and in the nightlists. So I will be able to use. Currently, I have walled off all the audio stream stuff in a file because of I didn't have OS and I didn't have Vorbis. But now there's Vorbis, still no OS. But maybe I can move all those things back. Just that I have two versions of the audio stream update. I have two versions of this, one for the file, one for the from memory blob. And then I have load audio stream from file, load audio stream from bytes. That's maybe that's what I will do. Maybe I will scrap all this. But it was interesting to look at. I think you need to do these exercises to you understand a problem by going through it like this. Yeah. It would be slightly more annoying for people who make engine games because they will have used load from file and then suddenly they want to make the web build and it doesn't work. They must load from bytes. But I really don't think that's big deal. The file system for web just meant what it meant was just a file that it could load assets from. It's just a simple blob of like all the textures, all the sounds is in a file. It's not asynchronous at all. It was just the simplest thing I could think of at that time. Maybe here's an idea. Instead of, if we want asynchronous stuff, I said already that we can do asynchronous stuff on, for example, Windows using os.read. You can use os.read entire file on a thread. You'll be fine. You just do it's asynchronous, and you can be done. When you're done with that, you can use the data. Maybe, someone can just implement a fetch API thingy and use that on web. Like maybe the library itself can supply like a load file asynchronously, but it's just for the file, and then you get the data and you can pipe that into the load texture from bytes. It doesn't really solve the audio stream stuff because that one needs to continuously think about these things. But anyway, I think Game Jam games, the web build is good for Game Jam games. That's what I'm making it for. I'm not making it for releasing a big game. For a big game, you get streaming from disk in a desktop build or on your platform, whatever your platform is. But for the web build, I think inputting everything into the thing is fine. Yeah. Maybe I can somehow make it so that the index file, this guy. Maybe I can make it so that before it's loaded, if the WebAssembly file is very heavy, maybe you can just have a splash screen. Web's pretty powerful, not only for Game Jam. Well, I don't really see almost all games I play in a browser or Game Jam games. I can't remember the last time I played a non-Game Jam game in a browser. All the games that like made money and stuff and were on Steam or something. But at least that's a start, It works good for Game Jam. But then maybe it's the whole... I think a bit like this almost. If you want to make a web game and it needs to be really tailored to the web, like you want to make a big web-only game that's like it's in the web browser and stuff, then I think maybe you shouldn't use this library. Maybe then you should just then you only have like a... Maybe then you only implement the web version. Okay, it's good to have the desktop version for debugging and stuff. So, but yeah, I'm unsure. I think maybe a really serious web game might need completely custom tech because it needs to handle asynchronous calls and all that stuff in such a different way than desktop builds do, and the requirements are different because the latency is different. If you load a file asynchronously on desktop versus web, the latency is very different. Like maybe you need to handle that differently. Well, yeah. Anyways, a lot of philosophizing, one could say. Right. That's it for today's stream. Thank you all for watching. If you want to support this project, Karl2D, there's a link to you can become a sponsor on GitHub if you want to support it. I'm doing this. I'm sort of keeping my book up to date. I'm full time. I'm keeping my book up to date and doing my open source programming, and then after, that's what I'm doing at least this coming few months to try to make sure that this library is all good and done and ready. Right. Thank you all for watching. Have a nice day. Bye bye. And now I press the magic button. Where is it?